Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition, another episode, another great conversation with Margie McNally on the Caregivers Toolbox tools for everyday caregiving. We give you information and education about senior care topics. As I just mentioned, our guest today is Margie McNally of Interior Elements Design. She is an interior designer and environmental consultant specializing in designing and improving a senior's households through universal design. And we'll get into what that is shortly. But anyways, if you are looking to be able to keep mom at home, or you're looking to build your house so that you can live there until the very last day that you're on this earth, Margie McNally is the person you need to speak to. Margie, thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
So happy to be here, Ryan.
So I briefly explained what you do, but there's nobody that's going to explain what you do better than you. So, what is kind of interior design and kind of environmental consulting, specializing in what you do? Explain that to people so they have an understanding of this type of work and industry, because it's probably not as well known as it needs to be.
Absolutely, Ryan. Interior design goes way back into centuries of design for human spaces. But my background as an environmental interior designer is based on human health. So I have specialized in what they call sustainable design as it relates to how people feel in their spaces and how healthy they will stay in their spaces.
Perfect. So, and is the focus generally on seniors, but I'm sure it can be on anybody that is looking for that type of service.
Yeah, it's really about anybody's environment, anybody's basically home environment, human health and materials that we choose that affect our health. But as of late, I have been focusing more on design for independent lifestyle and what they call aging in place, which is, I'm not too crazy about that term. So I use independent lifestyle design. And it can be, addressing like flexibility, accessibility, materials that are like safer to use, like non-slip flooring, and products that do not contribute to poor indoor air quality. So I've kind of focused on that throughout my career, but now it's specifically for the senior population.
Gotcha. And so when people think about universal design, that seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I can certainly learn quite a bit. And that's one of the best parts of this podcast is I get to learn from people. Universal design is being able to design or retrofit or renovate a home so that it helps somebody's special needs. And by special needs, it could be physical impairments or any issues that they might have, like you said, non-slip flooring. I've caught it through the Zoom. Um, but but otherwise, somebody who's able-bodied or isn't looking for universal design is not going to necessarily notice it. It's not going to stick out like a sore thumb, like a grab bar normally would. Does that kind of encompass that, or is there anything you would correct on that or add to that?
Exactly. I mean, universal design principles encompass 7 different areas. Just to briefly list them, it's equitable use, which means design to be useful and marketable to all. So that means like a woman carrying a baby needs just the same amount of convenience with lever door handles than someone in a wheelchair may need. Flexibility in use, which accommodates a wide range of different individuals. It should be simple and intuitive and easy to understand. So, directions to use something should be very user friendly and let's see, perceptible information. So it should be really, really, the design should communicate effectively what the person needs to do. And tolerance for error. This means that it minimizes any hazards naturally. low physical effort, which means it's not a lot of force or energy to take to do the motion, and size and space for approach. So that's like the low fatigue and low physical exertion. So universal design doesn't have to be unattractive. There's very stylish grab bars that you can put in your bathroom, for instance. Design, beautiful flooring like non-slip. I'm going to say non-slip luxury vinyl tile is one example of flooring that can look just like wood, but it has a little bit of a texture and grit to it so that it's less slippery for older people or people in wheelchairs or using walkers.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this reminds me of a 60 Minutes episode that I watched with an architect named Chris Downey. And he was, at one point in time, he was able to see, and then he went blind. And he started claiming, he didn't start claiming, he was interviewed and he said, "Yeah, I'm doing better at my job than I've ever done, and I'm blind as an architect." And they say, "Why?" And he goes, "Because there aren't any blind architects. So I can design things for people who are blind and use universal design where nobody would notice that this is specifically for somebody who's blind." And he used an example is that he renovated like a subway station, and he put in different styles of concrete that aesthetically looked nice and most people would think were for just the looks, but it was so people who are blind when they're walking with their cane will hear one type of noise when the cane is scraping against the concrete, and then when they move off the path, it will make a different noise, and nobody would notice that unless you're blind and you have a cane and you're using that. And that was one of the things I watched that because I was like, that's universal design. That's what Margie does every single day, trying to provide help to people with it being low impact and universal design where people don't even know it's there, but when you know it's there, it's a huge help and a huge benefit.
Yeah, it's totally instinctive. It's intuitive. I just installed the grab bar for my 93-year-old mom in my own home so that when she comes to visit me, she can take a nice hot bath and I don't have to worry about her getting out of the bathtub. And it's a beautiful bronze grab bar right outside of the tub. And I use it every day now because I don't want to fall either. So it's really designed for everyone.
I've had a couple slips in the old bathtub that make me wish that there was a grab bar somewhere that you can quickly grab because the curtain doesn't really hold up very long. Uh, Now, and so what is kind of that process look like for people that are listening? Their people are boomers are getting older every day. They're unfortunately starting to see the decline. They're getting injured or they're physically or mentally starting to decline from old age. What does the process look like for adult children? What should they be looking for? When should they get involved with talking to somebody like yourself about this type of universal design? And what are some of the more common things that you're doing for family members? What are those entry level kind of, hey, let's start with this and then see where it goes kind of projects that people are coming to you for more often than not?
Sure. So I can speak from experience with some of the clients that I've worked with. Basically, as people get older and our baby boomer generation is aging in place, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of senior citizens by the year 2025. So we have to, kind of consider this and take into consideration that our environments are going to have to fit that demographic. So when I'm called into a home, the first thing I do is I look for safety issues. This can be things in the pathway, the walkway, the stairs, books, people stack books on stairs or belongings that are supposed to go up to the second floor and they leave them on the stairs. This is a tripping hazard. So I always look for things that people can trip and fall over, first of all. And then I look for space planning. I look at the room layout and the room design. Are the paths accessible? Can you get a walker through there or a wheelchair? Some of the other things that I have worked with people on is their lighting. I have a significant background in lighting, especially energy efficient lighting, but also in better lighting and lighting controls. So just an example, I had a client that had an old fashioned fluorescent light bulb in her basement. And I went to help her get something downstairs, and she said, well, wait a minute, you got to wait till that light comes up. It takes about 5 minutes for it to come on. And I was like, what? That's ridiculous. Like, that's the old fluorescent bulb that used to have like a 3-minute warm up time. So I immediately swapped it out for an efficient and bright LED light. And then we ended up doing a retrofit in her home and replacing all of the incandescent sockets, recessed downlight sockets with LED. She never has to change a light bulb again. So it's really, it's lighting, it's space planning, it's material selection for safety. And the other thing is rollout racks. There are some fabulous products right now that you can pull out a rack on your bottom cabinet in your kitchen, and everything comes out to you. So there's no more bending, kneeling on the floor, falling over, trying to get a pot at the back of the cabinet, and in upper cabinets as well. Pull down racks that you just basically pull it down with a handle. Everything comes right to you in front of you. And then with a touch of your hand, a pneumatic lift brings it right back into the cabinet. So things of that nature that will really, really make people's lives more accessible and safer.
I wanted to touch on the lighting. I had looked at your website, and you have a page dedicated just to the lighting side of things. And I would bet that more often than not, and I could be wrong, that people don't think about lighting. They think, maybe they think about a tripping hazard that's obvious, like a throw rug, or whatever. And the throw rugs, generally easy to fix pretty quickly. But you would also have to imagine that lighting is a big issue that people kind of forget about because they're so used to the lights of the way that they are, because they've been that way for probably over a decade. And then all of a sudden you realize, hey, listen, if we're able to illuminate this room to get you to be able to see more and turn this thing, not necessarily into the sun, but make this thing so that it's not too dark and it doesn't, and you're going to instinctively be able to see more and be able to avoid hazards that otherwise you might miss. And as you get older, that kind of vision gets worse, that field of vision kind of narrows a little bit, and you might not be able to see something that's on the ground that normally 20 years ago you would have seen in the same lighting. And so what if families, I mean, is that a tough sell for families with the lighting, or and I don't mean you're necessarily selling, but are people resistant to lighting, or is that just makes sense? I know you have a lot of background in lighting, and it makes sense to me that the more lights you're going to have, the easier life's going to be. How does that conversation look like, and what are you find families kind of consider when you mention maybe retrofitting the lighting or doing something about that?
Well, you're absolutely right, Ryan. They don't think about it. They're not asking about it because they've always lived that way. What if it's not broken, don't fix it, that type of thing. However, having the background that I do and knowing the products that are available, I'm constantly looking for new and innovative ways to keep people safe. So one of the things would be like a touch lamp next to the bed. This is something where you just reach over, touch. These were famous back in the 70s, I think. They don't really make them a whole lot anymore, but they do exist, and they're very functional for older folks that do not want to try to find the light switch in the middle of the night and then give it that twisting motion. This is basically touching the base of the lamp, it comes on. And then I have right here, I have these little motion sensor night lights. So this is something you just put in an outlet at the bottom of the bed or some part of the bedroom. The person gets out of bed to go to the restroom in the middle of the night, the light comes on, leads them into the bathroom, stays on for 20 seconds and goes out after they've retired back into the bed. They also have switch plate lights. These are lights that go right in the back of the switch plate, and so that way when you come into a room, you don't have to feel around on the wall. It's got like a very dim LED strip at the bottom. And then they also have them for wall outlets so that you can use these as a guide along a hallway. If you had these on the outlets along a hallway, you'd always have a night light on. So there's all kinds of products that are constantly being developed. And also with lighting, I've done a lot of research. I've written some courses for a company that I worked for previously on human-centric lighting. There's a lot of conversation going around about human-centric lighting and circadian rhythms and all of that, color temperature of lighting. People need to be educated about the color temperature of lighting, because if they just go into their home goods store and purchase LED lamps, they may be getting lamps that are a blue color that they will not be happy with. So color rendering index and color temperature is really key when choosing lighting, and also dimming controls. We want to bright light that space, like you said, but we don't want it to be like the sun. And we want to be able to control that. So we want to be able to dim the lights down. And that also goes for window coverings. If you are letting the natural sunlight into your home, it's a wonderful thing and it lifts people's spirits, but it also has to be controlled so that it's not a glare factor, which can also cause falls.
Yeah, we're in my condo. We have we're western facing, so in the afternoon, it's like it feels like when Kramer opens up the door to the apartment and the red light hits you, and you're like, whoa! But absolutely, I mean, you'd be foolish not to take advantage of as much natural, free, great light as you can. And in some of those pictures that are on your website, I mean, there's especially the one with the dining room and the one from outside. I mean, those great big windows are outstanding to be able to have. Obviously, you can't kind of retrofit that. I'll turn off my phone, retrofit that after the fact. But if you can take advantage of that more, then certainly that's a good thing to do. And are you also involved in kind of changing the layout of a home so that somebody can live on the first floor and kind of make make that work in the best way possible, because that's something that's ever more popular, to avoid going up and down the stairs, the tripping hazard, the fall hazard. And a lot of these people are living either alone or with their spouse. You don't need a 3,000 square foot home anymore at that level. 1,500 square feet will do you just fine. Is that something that you help families out with as well, or is that not something you do?
Absolutely. One of my biggest inspirations back in the 90s was the book called The Not So Big House by Sarah Suzanka, architect. And I read her book and I fell in love with her philosophy of building homes that are not so much McMansions and oversized, but are functional and adaptable. So she believes in designing spaces that can be changed and modified later on. So if somebody's designing a new home, the best thing they can do is build 36-inch doorways, make the hallways wider, make the bathrooms ample for a 5-foot radius for a wheelchair. Some of the things that she talks about are rooms that can be converted, or multi-purpose rooms, like a den that can be used as an office, or a guest room when someone comes, and definitely a full bathroom on the first floor. So I do help people with that as well. Hopefully they do have a restroom on the first floor. I had one woman that lived in an old Victorian home. Um, she had one bathroom on the second floor of this beautiful Victorian home. And she had this big porch that was totally vacant, like it just was like a storage space. And I advised her to to have a bathroom put into that space, with a tub, with a walk-in shower, curbless shower, and safety flooring, and the turnaround radius. She had plenty of room to do it. And it was such a great project because she could now live on her first floor if she needed to. So that's definitely something that I like to help people with, is to just try to help them modify their existing space and how they can make it work for themselves. And
Yeah, and you know, my job, as you know, is to do private home care, and my whole existence and your whole existence, as well, is because people want to be in their home as long as humanly possible. And if there's some modifications, even if there's a moderate cost to them, you know, that moderate cost, what people I think sometimes forget in seeing the forest through the trees is that, um, people, a lot of times people will think that private home care and assisted livings are competitors to one another. And certainly I understand where people consider them competitors, but at the end of the day, an assisted living is a room and board scenario that's a social model. And we're allowing caregivers to come into a home and help somebody stay in their home, which you're doing a similar thing. I guess the point that I'm making is that assisted living costs are $10,000 a month, six to $10,000 a month, depending on what services you're getting, and that cost is only going to go up. So when you look at spending $10,000 or $20,000, which I don't know how the average cost of renovating a home is to allow universal design, but even if you're talking $50,000, which is a lot of money, um, you're talking still, that's 6 or 7 months worth of an assisted living services. That could be 4 or 5 months of private home care services. And the reason I bring that up is, as much as I would love to have 50 24-hour cases drop into my lap tomorrow, the honest guy in me is saying, hey, listen, if you spend some money with Margie up front and doing some universal design, you might never need private home care services. You might not need to go into a nursing home. Or if you do need private home care services, that might be at a much later date, because the toughest thing I have in my world is fall prevention. I can never prove that I prevented a fall, right? Like, unless there were a lot of falls beforehand, it's hard for Margie to sit there and say, because you did these modifications, I helped you prevent mom from going into nursing home. But the fact of the matter is that 10 or $20,000 in the whole scheme of senior care is not a whole lot of money. It's a lot of money, period. And I understand that for somebody that's making 15 or $18 an hour, they couldn't even fathom that. But you're thinking a nursing home is 15 grand a month. So consider those options when you're thinking about universal design, because if you're able to spend some considerable money up front on things, it may save you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on the back end, where somebody is able to live in their home longer, be happier, not have a tougher relationship with your mom or dad because you forced them to move out of their homes, or whatever it is. That's what you do at the end of the day.
Yeah, people do want to stay in their homes. Most of the people that I meet, just they fight it all the way, any kind of assisted living or nursing home. They just do not want to do it. They want to remain in their family home for as long as possible. And if that family home is too big, sometimes people do downsize and move to a smaller area, smaller home, smaller footprint. But if you can utilize all of those universal design principles with the, stepless entry and non-sloping walkways and just principles that you can incorporate into the new place, then it's an easy transition.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
And
just
one thing that I always remembered about universal design that I loved was, I saw a picture somewhere, and it was like the walkway leading up to the house. A lot of times in homes there's like 2 or 3 steps till you get to the actual, level of the door. And they, excuse me, taken that out, and they had made that into a ramp. But that ramp didn't look like a ramp. It just looked like a slight incline that you or I would just be like, oh, all right. So we're just walking, instead of steps, we're going up. But to somebody who has fall issues, to somebody who doesn't have strong legs, or somebody who's not who's in a wheelchair, or who has a walker, that's a huge benefit to somebody and makes their lives that much easier. And one thing, and two things that I like to talk about on this podcast is, I think in our industry we're a little bit shy about talking about how much things cost. And when you're able to compare a nursing home on a monthly basis to what universal design costs would be, it's a lot easier to understand why there's a benefit to your services. It's not only helping somebody's quality of life, but it's also saving money in the long term. And I think, private agencies are very guilty of this, as are some others, of being very hesitant to talk about pricing because it can get expensive quickly. But what families need to understand is that if Medicare is an issue because of the last 2 or 3 years of our lives. It's not the first 73 years. It's the last 3 years that we're spending all the money on things, and we're going to be spending money one way or another. So it's a good, wise idea to spend it as wisely as possible. Um, and so I think, like, just and to talk on that, what is the average cost for? I mean, I know it's impossible because there's so many different things, but what when a family member is talking about universal design and having something, what is the range of these services that where they start at to where you could go all the way up? I mean, is there a general average range of what people can spend? Of course, in this world, if you want to plate the walls with gold, Margie will do it for you, and it's going to cost the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that's not as realistic as what are people generally looking at when it comes to these types of costs?
Well, I pride myself in the fact that I'm always looking for the best cost for my clients. Typically, I will look for the lowest cost option. First thing I would do a safety assessment or just a walkthrough of the home just to see what the needs are. What's their lifestyle? Do they travel a lot? Do they entertain a lot? So you kind of base it on lifestyle. Um, their lifestyle needs and what the physical needs are. And then if it's something where, they've just come back from rehab and they need a wheelchair ramp, then I refer them to professionals within my network. Um, I don't know what the cost of like ramps are off the top of my head, but something like just a home assessment with myself would maybe be a couple of $100s, nothing really extravagant. And then if the person would like to renovate their kitchen and redesign it so that it's more accessible, maybe take that microwave down from over the range so that they can reach it, maybe put those rollouts in, we're talking maybe a couple of $1,000s. A total kitchen renovation might be on more of like a 10,000, $20,000 budget, depending on the size of it. It's very, very subjective to what they're doing and what materials they want to have as well. Like, do they want granite? Do they want laminate? Do they want vinyl? Do they want solid wood or ceramic tile? So it can be all over the place. But just to have a home assessment and someone to just kind of take a look at things that they don't see every day because they're on top of them, for someone to come in and be able to say, that's not working, that's a trip hazard, or that could be modified very easily with a grab bar. That's worth its weight in gold for me to come out and just take a look.
Yeah, and again, it's very, like you said, subjective, and everybody's going to want different things, but it gives an idea of what that range can be. And certainly, you're not going to be coming in and like we're friends with Norma over at Oakley Home Access. You're not coming in with an aluminum ramp and putting that in the front yard. That's a different service that you would be referring out, and I imagine that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're talking about you're in theory going to be a almost a general contractor on making a home as available to an aging senior for most cases, but I'm sure you'll work with disabilities of all sorts, that allow somebody to stay in their home and making their lives as much easier and possible. And some of that's going to deal with construction and renovating and things like that. If you need a ramp put installed or just some general grab bars, that might be a different referral out. But you're going to be able to make this into something that's going to not only help that senior, but again, and correct me if I'm wrong, these, not this part, but the next part, seniors, everybody's going to die. I know I'm right on that. But my point being is that, you're going to be able to either move into mom's home or resell mom's home without it feeling like somebody just rolled up with a disabled ramp in the front yard. And then it's like, there's one by by my house in Medford where somebody has built in a wooden wheelchair ramp. Well, I mean, you're going to have to remove that if you want to sell that house moving down the road. The idea is you're going to be renovating a home. So not only is it good for the person that's living there, but it's also going to be able to be sold to somebody else that may not have any needs like that at all. And they just say, oh, it's great that I have a pull-out microwave that I can drop my food into instead of it being above the stove like every other home in America it is. Isn't that kind of part of the beauty and the expertise of what you're bringing to the table?
Absolutely. Definitely style in mind. We do these modifications knowing that interior design and aesthetics are important to people. So I would definitely recommend, you know, grab bars that are a little more stylish than your utilitarian type looking ones, or flooring that is going to give it an aesthetic of maybe wood versus vinyl sheet goods or something like that. So definitely, and then the resale value is key. You do want the home to be able to be attractive to the next buyer without it looking like it's been institutionalized. So I'm always aware of that as an interior designer. I like to work with occupational therapists because they have they know the physical limitations of the client, and then I can come in and make suggestions for products and materials that are not only safe but look, very pleasing to the client and the next buyer of the house. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Oh, geez. I was, sometimes I mute myself. See, this is the beauty of the podcast. We just keep rolling with the punches. We're humans. We make mistakes. One of the things that I think is important to talk about, as we get closer to wrapping things up, but I think it's important is that, first of all, you're located in Massachusetts, and how do people reach you if they're in this area? What is the best way to contact you and reach out to you, and your website and things like that?
Oh, I do have a website that started out as a sustainable design website talking about green building materials and healthy products that don't off-gas pollutants into the environment. But now it encompasses sustainable design and aging in place or independent lifestyle design. So people can go to www.interiorelementsdesign.com. And they can email me at margie@interiorelementsdesign.com if they would like to talk to me about maybe an initial consultation. I always do an initial consultation with the client via phone or Zoom at no charge, just so we get to know each other and see if we can work with each other. And then I'm happy to set up a consultation in the home.
And so the reason I mean, first of all, we were going to certainly do that. And if people are watching this on YouTube or listening to it on a podcast, I will have Margie's contact information and specifically her website in the show notes. But when you go to your website, one of the things that's immediately impressive is you're part of a number of associations. You have a number of accreditations to your name to, let families know that you know what you're doing, you're invested in this type of work for the people. And one of the things that's tough about your job and my job is we're geographically confined to some space. And so somebody out in Arkansas or somebody in California is probably not going to be able to hire Margie, but I guess if you pave her way and it's a nice town, she'll come out there. But what should people be looking for with accreditations, with kind of getting that feeling that this person is serious about this, and what should maybe those stamps of approval look like for somebody that's maybe not in the Massachusetts area that can hire you? What are those kind of things people should look for in a universal design specialist?
Well, actually, just to kind of briefly touch on the point you made, I worked on a home on Long Island, New York. It was a lead for homes, and I did it all virtually. We had meetings via phone and Zoom, and I was the materials person for that project so that they could meet their lead certification. Whether or not they did any designing for aging in place, I don't think so. But that was a few years ago, and it worked very well. We were able to accomplish a great deal remotely.
So
Uh,
you're geographically far wider than I had originally thought.
Yeah, I mean, that's a rare instance. That was a referral from another lead consultant. And lead is leadership in energy and environmental design. So that's what the lead accredited professional designation is. So they selected me to work on that project as part of the lead team for their home certification, which made gold, by the way. And then I have NCIDQ, which is National Council for Interior Design Qualification. That's an interior design license. So in certain states, you need to in order to call yourself an interior designer, as opposed to decorator, you have to have that license. Fortunately, well, I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, in Massachusetts, you don't need to have that license. Only certain states have required that. But back in the early 90s, a group of colleagues and I went back and got that license for our own peace of mind and our own professionalism. And then there's the CAPS, which is the Certified Aging in Place Specialist designation. And that's my most recent certification, achieved that last summer. And most recently took a universal design course, an all-day course in just the actual aspect of designing for disability or aging in place. So that was really, really very informative, because that got more into the nuts and bolts about, code issues and doorway widths and flooring coefficient of friction and all of that. So very interesting.
Absolutely. And I'll plug your website again. Go to interiorelementsdesign.com. And because the reason I ask and mention it is because it's on your website there of CAPS and lead. And I won't even try to pronounce a phrase for it, but the NCIDQ. I don't know how that would be said, like leads. That's not a really good acronym, I guess, but they're there. And then you can, if you need to, you can look and see if the people in your town have those same kind of qualifications, certifications, and partnered with other associations. I am in agreement with you. In Massachusetts, it's very, very strange that we don't have, Massachusetts is known as Taxachusetts, right?
Yes.
But when it comes to certifications for doing business with seniors, there is virtually none. I mean, it's a free for all. And so it is the onus is on families to find out who is good and who is not good. And that's not always the easiest thing, especially when there's 1,000 different home care companies to choose from. And certainly in the world of construction, everybody's heard numerous horror stories of getting hooked up with the wrong person and things going to hell in a handbasket rather quickly. So it is important to do that research and to know who you're working with and to have those conversations, and don't be you know, a penny smart, a pound foolish by not spending a few $100s on a meeting with Margie because somebody else offered you something for free. I mean, it's just, this is, if you're going to be looking at doing a remodel of your kitchen, the $200 or $300 or whatever it costs to do the assessment with Margie is going to be the least of your worries when it comes to making sure a good job is done. And it's the same with home care. Talk to people, have the conversation. We're not afraid to help to have a 30-minute conversation or an hour conversation with somebody, because it in my eyes, it just proves the fact that I know what I'm talking about. And at the very least, we're going to leave here that you're going to say, hey, Ryan was really informative, Margie was really informative, we're going in a different direction maybe, but they did a great job and we were professionals. But in Massachusetts, it's a little wonky. There's no certifications or anything like that. Margie, is there anything else that you want to let people know as we're kind of wrapping up here? You've given us 40 minutes of your time, and I appreciate it. What else? Is there anything else to let people know about, or any other ways that people can get in contact with you, whether it's a phone number or social media or anything like that? And if not, that's okay. I just want to give you one last shot.
Sure. I mean, I have a Facebook page, Interior Elements Facebook page. People can check that out as well. And I just want to say that I'm so passionate about doing this type of design. I've done design all my life, interior design. Sustainable design has always been my passion. And I'm even more passionate about designing for independent lifestyle, because I see the need so greatly there. In my own family, some of my friends, some of my neighbors. I'm very, very connected to communities. I'm very connected to my mom's community in Mansfield, Mass, and I'm connected to my own community here in Taunton. I just met the mayor last week. I was very excited to meet her and tell her what I do. And honestly, I want to educate people most of all. I want them to be aware of the fact that there are better ways to design. There are products out there that will make your life easier and safer and more accessible. So I'm doing a series of talks for different councils on aging, just for that purpose in mind. And, you know, when I get all these consults lined up on my calendar, I'll be very, very happy. But in the meantime, I'm here to educate people and, you know, share what I know.
Awesome. Well, Margie, thank you so very much for being a guest on the Caregivers Toolbox. It is much appreciated. And again, go in the show notes if you want to reach out to Margie, see her website. Her contact information's on there. That link will be in the show notes. Otherwise, Margie, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Ryan. It was a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity very much.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. And thank you all out there in the ethos of the world that are listening to me chat on with Margie. And hopefully you find that this was educational. It gave you the information you need and puts another tool in the toolbox of the caregiver's toolbox, to be as corny as humanly can be, to give you some information and being able to care for loved ones as people age. Death and taxes, folks. We're all going to go through this one way or another. So it's better to be prepared than unprepared. So thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.